Good evening. Welcome to African Drums. I'm Elsie Harry, and I'm glad that you've joined me this evening. Tonight, we turn our spotlight to those who work to achieve a healthy Guyana. We turn our attention to the writer, the social activist, the voice for those who are afraid to speak, the critical eye who documents, explains, and where necessary, rebukes. From the legendary A.J. Seymour to Martin Carter and a host of young men and women, the written word has a significant part to play in our Guyanese landscape. Through it all, there is one constant thread: truth-telling. Tonight, we talk with one of our younger truth-tellers, Ruel Johnson. He's a two-time winner of the Guyana Prize for Literature. Ruel, welcome to African Drums.
After the introduction, I feel a whole lot of pressure.
No pressure, just a friendly conversation.
Yeah, I know you, so.
Exactly, you know me, so that's good. Yeah? Okay, so why did you decide to become a writer? I know you're a PC graduate and you're very witty. You could have chosen anything. Politics, for example. But why did you choose writing?
With writing, I don't think it's necessary that you choose writing. I think it's a great deal it chooses you. That if it is that you have the instinct and the urge to write, you really get there has to be some sort of tremendous social pressure or other pressure to do anything else. So it's a case where in the writing, I think it sort of grips you, and the pressure is actually to not write. The choice is you have to make a conscious choice not to write.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the role of the writer in our society?
I think perhaps with less measured and eloquent grandiloquence as than you've put it. I think it's a fundamental role for writers to tell truth about the society. As with all artists, I think the final goal of all art is truth, and that's particularly good of fiction, ironically enough, in the sense that they are. I mean, I'm a journalist as well. I practice journalism, and as a journalist, you go out and you get the sort of truth that is primarily accessed by fact finding, etc., and investigation. But even often that is not enough. I was looking at I posted this thing on Facebook the other day with the 1960 something Olympics, and there was or 70 something with the two black power activists with their hands held up in the air, and there was the third man, this white man, on the podium. And very often the picture is seen as two black power activists and a non-activist incidental person, white person. And in fact, there's a statue based on the event, and in honor of the civil rights movement, etc. And the third man is absent. But when you look at the story, a bit of journalism on this story, he was an Australian, and he was very much in solidarity with them. And at a time when it was not beneficial for him, and in fact, he suffered the most because he went back in Australia. He held the record. I think he won silver medal at the Olympics, and he suffered his entire life. His record was expunged from public files, etc. And he was only recently, I think, in the last decade or so, rehabilitated. But it's after he died. So the writer's goal in that case is to tell the truth behind that simple image, because they're particularly in this age when sort of instant gratification media presents a sort of snapshot-ish, Instagrammed, colored version of the truth. I think the imperative of writers is to go far beyond that.
And to present the whole truth, especially those parts that people...
as much of the whole truth as you can get at.
Okay.
Um,
I'm glad you mentioned Facebook because I do follow you on Facebook.
oh God.
So,
My
well, you know
condolences.
this. You know
Yeah.
this. So, I've been seeing you getting a lot of hits for the things that you post on Facebook. How does this affect you as a writer, as an individual? And does it influence what you put out there the next time?
Yes and no. What I have to say, I have to say. It doesn't matter the amount of likes or say. I say it anyway. But Facebook and social media, in as much as it can be, and again, this is where function comes in. As much as it can be the source of a great deal of untruth and stuff, it can also be a medium for truth telling as a writer. And it's a couple hundred years ago that this guy Martin Luther, who was the founder of the Reform movement in the church, who had to post his very rebellious thesis that church do. Today we have a Facebook wall. We had Walter Rodney, who used to have to go and speak on street corners, etc. Today, somebody wants to. You have social media. In many ways, it has sort of diluted the capacity for communication of truth or whatever. But in many ways, it's sort of, if it is that you know to manage it well, it has sort of intensified it. And you can reach somebody who has a serious message to put out. Doesn't have to go around with a megaphone anymore. People come to you and come to your message. But the thing is, that message has to be, if it is that you, and from the perspective of an artist as a writer, the message has to be one that you speak with some amount of integrity and with the awareness that it is often encountered or counterbalanced by a lot of bull, a lot of propaganda, and a lot of I think you have a duty to sort of fight though. But if it is you don't clear that space, lies win. Very simple. If it's truth versus lie dichotomy, the lies win.
Okay. Let us talk about art and politics.
Yeah.
Nina Simone said that you can't be an artist without reflecting on our times. But do you think that in Guyana, that is a good thing for artists to do? Does it jeopardize their career? Should there be a wall of separation between art and politics?
Never. No, you see, simple formula. Politics has to do with power, and in politics, the direction tends to go increasingly towards absolute power. Art has to do with truth, and truth, more often than not, almost inevitably, is a check on power, check on particularly absolute power. So if this you're going to be an artist worth your salt, particularly a writer, you have to operate with the awareness that your work will inevitably be political. If this you, and not just if you're an artist and stuff, even if you choose to be simply an exemplary artist, and so you're a visual artist and you paint some wonderful pictures of flowers, and there's all the rage, etc. And you get a sort of status in society. People notice, and you do interviews, etc. On your flowers. Inevitably, you can't just be talking about flowers in a society in which there's racism and inequity, etc. Because even the commodification of art, you're making money on your flowers, and somebody is starving. Eventually, you'll have to speak on these issues. The artist doesn't operate in a vacuum. You have to be reflective of something, and something has to influence you. So, art and politics will inevitably clash. Sometimes they clash for the better, but the artist is always on some side. At one point in time, the truth that the artist speaks may benefit one political movement or the other. and sometimes that very same movement finds itself at odds with that very same truth the artist is saying, and the difficulty becomes for the artist to maintain that truth. And Martin Carter would have sort of exemplified that when he had his famous poem about the mouth is always muzzled by the food it eats to live, which is a dilemma that many artists face. I think it reached a sort of a critical point over the past 10 years in which a lot of artists basically shut themselves up because of either fear of reprisal, or they felt that in order to benefit, in order to live as artists in the society, they either shouldn't take part in political criticism, or they ended up supporting, either directly or indirectly, lies. The lie of racism, the lie of absolute power, the lie of it's the lie of power always being right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually glad your answer went in that direction, because I do want to engage you on some political issues.
Sure.
You raged against the previous government about the policies that they had in place for culture. Tell us why. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think I believe, and I think I subsequently been vindicated, that there was a specific targeting of the development of culture, and for political reasons. The fact remains is that we are an ethnically divided country, and with art as a method of truth telling. I mean, for me, racism and ethnic division is based on based on a couple of lies. The lie that any one ethnicity is superior to the other. That's the key lie. I think because of the complex history that we've had with our politics, with ethno-politicization, ethnic divisions, etc., I think the past administration knew, and various electoral results bore them out, that it benefited them to keep that lie perpetuated. That's why there was a direct culture and art. The arts tend to mitigate the spread of that lie and reverse the thing. And so there was particularly writing. We've had seen a lot of money poured into, and badly so, visual arts, music, etc. But it was a studied avoidance of anything to do with writing. One of the things they tackled head on was the Caribbean Press, which was supposed to publish new writers, etc. That was deliberately focused after the fact on something called the Ghana Classics, which were books that were way out of print, decades old, etc. And the promise, the initial promise, to focus on emerging artists writing in Guyana was completely discarded until they were eventually forced to do so. So they decided to pick safe people who they knew wouldn't be writing about the current context. So yeah, that's the core of why. Above and beyond, I mean, but related is that we have, I think in Guyana, have a history that is, while it has divided us, it has the potential to position us for what I see as global leadership in a world in which you see a constant clash of cultures. You see it with ISIS, you see it with Modi's India. You even see it with the US, with the resurgence of anti-immigrant racism. You see it in Europe, you see it in parts of Africa. We have had the, more often that, harsh lesson of multiple cultures coming together and having to live in the same space. Once we could fix those problems, and I think art is the greatest tool we have in fixing those problems. we can provide sort of global leadership in in socio-cultural cohesion that I think the world needs. We're sort of a petri dish, for lack of a better term, for social cohesion. So that is primarily why the and that's well we have Trinidad, we have Suriname. In fact, the Caribbean in particular, with regard to the proportions in which various ethnicities and came and were kept throughout history. Other places you have more homogeneous populations, even though they would have had a history of colonialism, etc. So I think we have a lesson for the rest of the world. We just have to get our culture right from a policy perspective and then put it into practice.
Okay, so since we're talking that we need to get culture right from a policy perspective, you are the advisor to the Minister of Education on cultural policy. So you're directly in a position to make some of these things right.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm directly in a position to advise and facilitate. But the reality is that it is the stakeholders themselves who are going to make the difference. Last week I had a meeting with some people from the creative industries, because creative industries is a critical part of culture and development, etc. And I had some amazing ideas put forward, and I'm still working on this. I spent this weekend working on putting it together there, and then having subsequent meetings. I also have to have a meeting with stakeholders involved in culture, as distinct from, say, creative industries, people involved in drumming and various religions that we have. And I sort of, under a project that I got funding for, Janus Cultural Policy, which is sort of streamlined dovetailed into my work. We had these meetings last year. So it's just a matter of replicating that, and at a national level. I mean, eventually we'll have to have a national conversation on culture. It's in keeping with a lot of obligations we've had internationally. UNISUR, CELAC, there's the UNESCO meeting that's coming up next month, which is going to define how it is that countries like ours, and the world in general, countries like ours specifically, mainstream culture and development in the and you know this lingo, the international NGO lingo, but in the whole post 2015 global development agenda, post MDG sustainable development goals agenda, culture is going to be playing an increasingly critical part. So we have to get ourselves together.
Okay, can we preempt this a bit? Can you
Sure.
tell us about some of the areas that the government would want to tackle in these policies that they're discussing with stakeholders and other people in the society?
Copyright is one. There's a critical aspect of it. Intellectual property overall. Not only there's an imperative to get it right, but we are under pressure to get it right from our international partners. We have obligations to UNISUR that I represented the minister at early September, to show what we're doing with regard to intellectual property rights. The U.S. ambassador recently spoke on the fact that we have to look after copyright here. But more importantly, it's something that's very basic. We're signatory to a couple of conventions, including the Born Convention. That says we basically have to respect the intellectual property of people, and more importantly, of our own citizens. So there's one area that we're looking at. The minister's committed to looking at it, at getting some proper framework within the year, but everything has to be consultative. One of the things I'd like to see developed, and in fact the meeting I had sort of bore that out incidentally, is the development of a sort of national film commission, That is because a couple of things. One, film is a powerful artistic tool for social cohesion, for truth. But it's also a powerful economic tool. And if we're going to look at diversifying the economy and using creative industries as a critical part of it, film sort of encapsulates almost all, or possibly encapsulates almost all the creative industries: visual arts, writing, music, photography, and it is that we get it right. It itself, in itself, spawns we call it corollary economic activity, catering, tourism, etc. Also, filming is entirely compatible with a sustainable development agenda, in the sense that instead of exploiting the forest for timber, we could exploit it for its visual beauty. So, that, in a nutshell, that's some of the things we're looking at. We also have to look at, because the Ministry of Education plays such a critical role in defining the citizens that we turn out, we also have to look at how it is that we cooperate with the Ministry of Social Cohesion in particular, in getting Guyanese to talk to one another and move beyond and solving our ethnic division issues.
Okay, what about art in schools? I know it's sprinkled onto the curriculum, but in terms of a structured program that focuses on art in schools, will the Ministry of Education be pumping money into developing this framework for?
That is money, but more important, proper programs. If you look at the arts overall in school, the minister said, Dr. Whitmire said, I think both ministers have committed to arts program. There was a previous push towards STEM education, but the idea is to have what we call STEAM, which is STEM plus arts, right? And there have been some concrete measures, particularly with regard to music, the other visual art, etc. But there's been training of teachers over the August holidays, for example, from the get-go. There has been an increase in the PAN program in collaboration with the Public Bank. We are also looking at certification. There's the Institute of Creative Arts, which is, so far, it's technically just basically a hodgepodge of old, which is Borough School of Art, National School of Dance, etc., at the Ghana Music School. We're looking at developing developing better programs, certifiable programs for the ICA. We're looking at putting it in a single building as opposed to having a hodgepodge of institutions that are really loosely related to one another as the situation stands. So yeah, there is a solid push. I think it doesn't hurt that we have a senior minister that whose background is in fact both education and the arts.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the struggling writer?
I'm still struggling.
Well, tell us how you got your work published, and tell us about what mechanisms are available currently in the Guyanese society for people who want to get published. For example, I'm a poet. Not a lot of people know me, not as much as know you, for example. So if I put work out there, how do I get people to read it? How do I get my stuff in print?
The reality is more people probably know your poetry than know mine, because you perform it. I have my poetry in print. I won't be locally, but I have my poetry in print. But I think I've published my own books under a mechanism I had to set up myself. But there are no, that which goes back to the old Caribbean Press issue. The Caribbean Press was to set up for emerging writers. It hasn't done that. I'd be looking at, one of the things I've been tasked with is looking at how we reform it so that serves its proper purpose, which is to first out, you have to find them, you have to help develop the talent, and then publish the works of emerging writers. I probably, this is the first time I'm revealing this, but the Commonwealth program, in collaboration with People Tree Press and Akashic Books in the States, is hosting in January a Caribbean-wide workshop for editors.
Are you listening, viewers?
Yeah, but it's done. It's done in the sense that the people have been selected, and they're choosing about 10 emerging editors of fiction from the Caribbean, and it's going to be held there. I'm one of the editors.
Congratulations.
So, yeah. But what I'm going to do is incorporate those sort of programs and see how we could collaborate with the initiatives like the Commonwealth Writers Program to build capacity here. And it's first of all, you have to build a couple of things. You have to build the writing, the capacity writing, which means workshops, etc., and hopefully proper writing program at either the Institute of Creative Arts and the University again, or both. You have to put a proper writing program in secondary schools. Then you have to look at things like editing, training proper editors, proofreaders, etc., with a specific eye for literary work as opposed to say newspaper work or just technical work. Then you have to look at layout and design people, training them properly. We have good people that have come incidentally from the newspaper industry. And then you have to look at local production at a reasonable cost, which means that you have to set up some sort of incentive for local printers to produce work, because they are a critical part of the creative industry. Then you have to look at marketing and taking advantage of existing offers in terms of funding the publications, because we don't have a society critical. We don't have a thing critical mass here. Our closest markets in terms of affinity as well as geography is the Caribbean, and the inherent problems, as any publisher would tell you, getting your books from in a cost-effective manner from Guyana to Trinidad to Jamaica to Barbados, etc. The shipping, etc. is but you also got to look at using new technologies as well. I have my books on Kindle format. Well, all this stuff that I'm talking about, I've had to learn from scratch. From a state perspective, this is what I've been lobbying for. The state, I think, has a role in terms of capacity development at every aspect of that process. And incidentally, that's one of the major themes that came up in the meeting I had last week. And it's not just creative writing alone, but it's movie production, etc. Contract writing. I mean, Kojo McPherson, who was in the meeting, brought up the issue of training artists to know how to negotiate properly. So we're going to take all those ideas and incorporate them into policy, both policy in general and would hopefully be a 5-year program, then with the preparation that's going to be eventually a 10-year program, because a lot of things you can't do within a 5-year cycle. Okay,
so this is a framework that needs to be developed.
Yeah.
But if somebody wanted to get something published, say next month, there's nothing. There's nothing.
That is the harsh reality. I mean, I think it's tragic that we've had a lot of lip service about creating opportunities for print, for people in the arts, etc. But the reality is there are no standing mechanisms for publication, etc. In addition to that, if you wanted something published next month, just to speaking, the first thing you got to do, even within a properly functioning environment, is realize nothing gets published next month. Properly set up, it is a process that takes editing, it takes review, often takes peer review, takes market research, etc. A friend of mine's come out with a new book, and he's announcing it from summer 2016. It means the book most likely would have been finished by him, but the process, etc. Takes time for quality writing. That said, I think in terms of one of the things that I'd like to see, and I'll be pushing for the Caribbean Press to do, is to look at works that would have been shortlisted for Guyana Prize or previous winners that have not been published, and publish them. There's Dennis Craig's Near the Seashore, for example, which was 1988 Guyana Prize winner, which has never been published for some reason by the Caribbean Press. Some people have been, some people have not. I think that had to do with more the political affiliation than literary merit per se.
Okay, so while we're on the Guyana Prize for Literature, did you expect to win?
Yeah, only that's why I submitted.
Oh, so yes, you did expect to win.
Yeah. When it comes to writing, I mean, this particularly creative writing is not something I do lightly. It's a very calculated thing in the sense that, but the writing itself, but the entry into a particular prize or so. Yeah, because I spend a lot of time at it. It's an enjoyable process, but it's a very hard process. And yeah, I expect it to win.
Aren't we cocky? What has it done for you as a writer, winning the Guyana Prize for Literature?
Which time?
Either time, both times.
I think, I don't know, 12 years ago, I think, when I first won.
You were 19? Were you 19?
No, I wasn't 19. I was 22.
It's still pretty young.
Yeah, I was 22. One, I think it opened up a lot of opportunities with regard to exposure, etc. That, quite frankly, the environment was not conducive to expanding upon. So there was, but the last time, the thing is the format that Desmond Hoyt saw the setup actually gave the prize a fair amount of prestige, but there's still reform that needs to be done with regard to how it's managed, regard to how it's frankly failed to grow. One of the perennial criticisms I've had is that they don't have workshops. They've attempted workshops. I see them more as clinics, because workshops actually look at producing something over time. So the prize, I think, is going to be, the shortlist is going to be announced soon, I believe, end of this month or so. But after this iteration of the prize, there has to be built-in developmental mechanisms that first of all seek to make sure that local writers, resident writers, win, or have an opportunity to win. Sorry, not as that prejudices the prize, but have the capacity to win. And the prize has to grow and expand, other than just simply tacking on a Caribbean aspect of it, which has been done. If it is that they know developmental mechanisms, it is not quite serving its purpose. BOCUS came out after the Guyana Prize, and their workshops, in fact, their mechanisms all year round. And what happens is that when you do something like that, it attracts better funding. The BORT Award now which is a Canadian thing. The Guyanese one last time has been attached to BOCUS because of the factors that they've done things properly. So we have to do it. We have to, I think, completely reform how the Guyana Prize is managed and make sure that it actually impacts upon the society. Most people don't know about it. I mean, I've been shortlisted I think most more people know about your poetry than know about mine. Because you're performing your poetry. The only things I'm actually looking at, by the way, is to see how we can reward, possibly not possibly, it has to be in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Business, to see how we reward venues that sponsor the arts. We've had the tragedy of Upscale Restaurant, which is
Yes.
which is pioneering in hosting poetry night, having to close after about 10 years of operation. But I see a lot of venues are now popping up.
Yes, there's Julian's Bar.
Julian's. There's a place in South Renville. There's another one on Robb Street, I believe. There's another one in Kingston. There's OMG that are now doing poetry nights. So we have to find a way to have those places. I see this place inside. There used to be Sidewalk, which was another pioneer at the jazz. The places that have been taken over there. Now featuring Herbie Marshall on Thursdays and stuff. So we have to find a way of encouraging performance of the arts, not just production in terms of writing and stuff, which is I'm off of that. I'm like publishing, etc. But we have to find ways of sustainable living for the artist. You don't make money in publishing poetry, I can tell you that, unless you win some big prize or something.
Yeah, but I do want to congratulate those places that are encouraging performance of the arts. I mean, some of them will tell you that they don't make a whole lot of money from it, or if any at all,
yeah.
but they still continue to do it. So if any of you are watching, people from OMG, Julian's, all the places that Ruel has mentioned, thank you and congratulations for doing something good for the Guyanese public.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll have a mechanism in place that will do something good for them in order to encourage, because it'll grow. I mean, I've traveled a bit over the past couple of years, and it's very simple. When you see a small bar or something that features just a jam session for music, etc., people come in to buy drinks, because the environment is there to sustain the artist, etc. Already a tango night, and once you get that sort of thing going, I think it grows organically. But there has to be a sort of a boost in the first place, and it comes from some direct investment.
Okay. Where do you see the artistic industry in Guyana in 10 years? Are we on the right path to success?
This is what I'm trying to think. Why I'd say this is that we have the capacity, both the people who are living here and the people who are attached to Guyana. I think we have. I think even Bakshu won the Bort Award, etc. We have Kojo McPherson winning not one but two film prizes in the past year that has been unheralded, virtually unheralded. And the thing with Guyanese creative people is that they have endured and survived despite the what was a deliberately oppressive environment for artists. Now that I think once it is that we have a policy for the facilitated environment for growth, I think Guyana will, and I think we once were. We produce some very good people, except for probably Walcott and Braffett. I mean, Carter stands on his own with people like Walcott and Braffett, etc. Although he enjoyed a less wide readership. So we have people here who can get stuff done. They probably count myself among them as well. FLC. Very passionate poetry. But we have the talent. We just have to put in place the mechanisms to have it develop, and most importantly, not to directly suppress it.
And I think it does good for Guyanese in the diaspora as well, when we see Guyanese work published. Because when I was in Sixth Form in St. Kitts and doing literature, I did Martin Carter poems. And when they said, "Oh, he's from Guyana," I'm like, look at us.
Yeah, it's amazing when when it is that you when you can see not just the poet, but the concerns expressed in the poetry or the fiction, given some sort of credence over I think it's something that encourages self-growth and it inspires, hopefully, not mimicry necessarily, but it inspires some young person. I'm thinking that Walcott had a thing where he said that he introduced one of his chapters in Another Life by this quote from, I think, Monroe's Psychology of Art, about these two Italian Renaissance masters, Cimabue and Giotto, and saying that one of them, well, people said that he was inspired by sheep, but he wasn't, and so he painted very good sheep, but the reality is, no, he was inspired by seeing a painting of the master. And so art usually inspires greater art. So once we start producing art, it will grow, it will grow exponentially. Again, I think we have the talent.
And like you mentioned before, it is a good tool for social cohesion, given our unique situation with plurality in Guyana.
And in a very thin summary, one is that if you have young people in Buxton, as a typically, say, Afro-Guyanese village, are able to tell their stories honestly and openly and shared with young people in, say, typically Indo-Guyanese village of Annandale, doing the same thing. It sort of it demystifies this sort of demonized order that people have been that has been perpetuated, and it shows that, you know, we're real people with real concerns, both of us, and these are concerns put out there without being filtered through a political lens.
Okay, so I want to end African Drums with a personal question.
Sure, let me hear.
It's not that kind of personal question, but what is next for you as a writer? You've told us about your plans in your professional capacity, but what is next for you, Ruel Johnson, as a writer?
Okay, well, I'm always working on something. I have a couple of film scripts that I've been working on over the past couple of years. I haven't had a chance to work on them properly. I see time to work on them decreasing exponentially the more I get into the program of the ministry. But I think in the long run, my major personal focus is to seek to create an environment that, frankly, people of my generation as artists were not given. And I could rest after that. I mean, anything after that I could sit down and create. I can create better. I don't intend to live anywhere else. I saw an interesting quote from this lady who won the Nobel Prize. And she said that her work is based primarily on the voices of the people in the streets, etc. And if she left, those voices would diminish in her head and in her work. So there wasn't an option for her. And I think it's the same thing for me. The important task, however, is to create an environment in which you can do that in the long term. I think it adds to the quality of the writing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ruel, for being on African Drums.
Thank you.
For sharing with us your life, your art, your work, and for the work that you are doing at the Ministry of Education.
No problem. It's good to have you.
Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. And I have some encouragement for fellow artists. Don't give up on your dreams. As Ruel said, it's up to the stakeholders to make things happen in Guyana. So come and have your say, even if you have to go down to Ruel's office. Ruel, where's your office located?
Actually, I got an open door policy. I'm at 26 Brickdown, which is right next to Buddies. I'll be calling. I usually have people come in and thing. But
He has an open door policy. There you go.
that said, artists still have to think of themselves not just as individuals, but as part of a larger grouping.
Okay,
And they have
good.
to think organize in terms of organization.
So let us hold him to his word. Go into his office and let him know about your plans, what you want to achieve, and the plans that you have for the arts in Guyana. Thank you for staying with us. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. Please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, send us an email, cuffy250gy@gmail.com. I'm Elsie Harry. Please join us next time.